Hello and welcome to Book of the Mouse Club, episode 83, Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022.
Morning, monsieur.
Where are you off to?
The bookshop. I just finished the most wonderful story about a beanstalk and an ogre and...
That's nice. Marie! The baguettes! Hurry up!
I'm sorry, but how can one possibly pay attention to a book with no pictures in it?
My dear child, there are a great many good books in this world without pictures.
I almost bounced clear out of the book. Some bouncing, huh?
Come home or make myself known.
J. Thaddeus Turtle, Esquire. Have you never met him? You will find his story in this delightful little book, The Wind and the Willows.
I've come to return the book I borrowed.
Finished already?
Oh, I couldn't put it down. Have you got anything new?
Welcome back. I'm your host, Courtney, and I am joined, as always, by the magic lamp to my magic carpet, my lovely co-host, Emily.
Thanks, Courtney. And listeners, today's episode is going to be really special. You have been waiting for this since we launched this podcast.
Joining us today is a special guest that we've had on our interview wish list since we started the podcast in 2018. We devoted our first summer reading series in 2019 to the original 7 Kingdom Keepers books across 4 episodes. And so we are very excited to welcome the author of those, Ridley Pearson, to Book of the Mouse Club for the first time. In addition to that beloved series, Ridley is the author of over 50 award-winning suspense and young adult adventure novels. His work inspired the Tony Award-winning Peter and the Starcatcher musical, and his talents expand further into the musical realm, where he is the bassist for an all-author rock band, the Rock Bottom Remainders. There is certainly so much to talk about from that intro alone, but our main focus today is his latest Disney publication, Cautionary Tales, a collection of scary stories starring favorite Disney villains. Welcome, Ridley.
Thank you. Hello to all.
Thank you so much for joining us. Cautionary Tales is not your first time weaving Disney magic into your storytelling. Kingdom Keepers remains incredibly popular with readers. It's still some of our most listened to episodes from our show when we read those in our summer series. What do you enjoy most about writing Disney stories?
You know, I do 2 things for a living. I kill people for a living, but in books. And I get to be a kid. And in my adult books, I do a ton of visceral research. I speak to police. I go to prisons. I go to medical examiners. You know, I do all sorts of in-depth research. The beauty of writing for young readers, and Disney in particular, is one is granted the license to just write from imagination. And I have a crazy, vivid imagination. So for me, it's that chance to be in a world where I'm young again. It's a chance to relive my own childhood and our daughters' childhoods, and to just go crazy with my imagination. So it's like the best, you know, it's the best gig ever. It's really unbelievable. And Kingdom Keepers, on top of all of this, they've let me into the park 30 times after hours or onto the ships, and that has just been incredible.
I bet.
So. You know, I didn't have that opportunity with Cautionary Tales, but they did come to me with that book and say, you know, would you be interested in writing 7 or 8 short stories based around our iconic Disney characters? And we would give you the latitude to make them suspenseful or scary, whatever you want to do, sort of in terms of the holidays and Halloween. And so... although they kept putting a bit in my mouth and pulling on the reins.
Don't make it too scary.
Well, or you can't touch those characters, you know. But I had a terrific editor named Lauren Berniak, and Lauren and I had a blast finding our way through all this.
Yeah, we've shared with our listeners. We previewed it on the last episode for October, just in case readers wanted to get that spooky season reading in ahead of our episode. So reading it absolutely picked up on that vibe, reminded us of some of our childhood favorites like Goosebumps or Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So we would love to know, who are your inspirations when it comes to suspenseful writing?
Suspenseful writing. Oh boy, that would be a long list. On the adult side, I have dozens of people I still read and read early on. On the children's side, Robert Stein is a friend of mine, the Goosebumps master. And Stephen King is a friend of mine, the adult master. I'm lucky to call those guys friends. They might not call me friends.
I'm sure they do.
Let's just be clear about that.
I saw Stephen makes appearances in your band, so I was like, oh, maybe
Stephen
talking shop there.
Is so much fun to play music with. But so yeah, I mean, multiple influences, including all the films. One of my biggest Disney influences is Fantasia, which I seem to always come back to, whether it's to do with Mickey's as the Mickey the Sorcerer's wand, which shows up in the new series Inheritance, the new Kingdom Keepers series called Inheritance. The first one comes out in February. So Mickey's wand is in that book. Chernabog has always interested me because Disney, rightly so, is quite careful about all their characters. They don't want you putting bubble gum on someone's face. And they've been very lenient with me in terms of Chernabog because they never really had him very defined. Walt Disney said he was the most evil creature he had ever conceived because Chernabog lives on human souls. And that just, if that doesn't raise the hair on the back of your neck, I don't think you're breathing. So, for me, that was a wonderful character to explore. And I keep exploring him. And Maleficent scares the pants off me. So, and has from the beginning. I'm not really a huge fan of the two movies. Don't tell Disney that. I actually left the first movie, not because I didn't enjoy Angelina Jolie and everything Disney had done. They were just telling a different backstory than I've had in my head my whole life. So I was like, wait, this doesn't jive. I'm going to have a psychotic moment here if I don't get out of the theater. But yeah, Maleficent fascinates me. Evil Queen, I was talking to Lauren about this. Evil Queen, her thing is jealousy and vanity. In fact, jealousy comes a lot, and vanity, they both come up a lot in evil Disney fairies and witches. Very interesting motivations to me. I'm not sure I ever had put my finger on that. And I think it was Lauren who said, well, and I went, oh my gosh. So you just don't know with Disney characters. They're very deep and rich, which I love about them. And that's why I'm attracted to the parks, is that they tell their rides in 3 acts, beginning, middle, and end. In fact, they write books. The Imagineers write these little 80-page books about each ride. And I think because of that depth that Disney gives it, they're not out there like some parks to just make you feel sick. Which always interested me that theme parks are just a place you go to feel sick. But each time you visit a ride, you see something new, you hear something new. It takes you on a slightly different story arc than you knew you were going to be on. And I can, thankfully they let me ride them alone 5, 6, 10 times. I feel something different at the end of each of those rides. So I think that I'm just very privileged to have the opportunity to deal with these very rich characters and stories.
So I want to talk about those characters. Specifically, you are no stranger to the world of Disney villains from Kingdom Keepers, that cast of characters. And you had the opportunity to write them again in Cautionary Tales. So how does it feel to write about these iconic villains like Chernabog and Ursula in a new setting? And also, what do villains have to offer in storytelling that heroes don't?
Ooh, let's save that last piece because I'll forget it.
Okay, we'll revisit it.
That's really interesting. Emily, I think that's terrific. In Cautionary Tales, being granted this license to reinvent either a front story, a future story, or a backstory allowed me to look for a trait or something that interested me about a particular villain and then start crafting from there. Good story is all about character. I love plotting. I just love plotting. But ultimately, what you're really writing about is character. And these Disney characters are amazing. So when I said to Lauren, could I do Ursula? And she said, let me check on that. Came back 4 or 5 days later and said, yeah, depending what the story is, what did you have in mind? I said, well, there was a witch trial in the 1200s in Scandinavia. And it was an unbelievable trial. And they put, like, I can't remember what it was, 3 or 7 women to death for being witches. And it's fascinated me just in my research. And I just have this vision that Ursula as Vanessa is one of those witches on trial. And that the people conducting this witch hunt trial don't have a clue of whom they're dealing with. And they get her up there and she just blows everybody out of the water. Ha ha. And, what would it be like if I could put a character in the jail cell next to this lovely woman, Vanessa, whom you would never know is Ursula, but she's conniving and tricks this girl into helping her, and the girl's helping her, and this pretty woman leans over a bucket, and the reflection is Ursula. And she said, go for it. So it's just stuff like that, where you have to take it and massage it and work it. And by the end of it, the two of them end up in the ocean together, because where else would Ursula end up? So,
of course.
I love that you brought up Chernabog. He was my favorite to read, both in Kingdom Keepers and also in this book, because you're right, there's really not much from Fantasia. No. So we can really see your imagination take off. And I love in this story, I thought it was interesting that you kind of gave him a soft spot.
Yeah,
he loves music, and maybe he's not evil. He's just doing his job as the keeper of the underworld. It's like how we have this debate about Hades in mythology. Is he actually a bad guy, or is he just doing his job in the universe?
Well, and sometimes evil entities are a bad guy to humans, but maybe not in their own universe. And so that gets very complicated, like Hades. Hades may have a place in the underground and the underneath. Not so great for humans to be hanging out and having cocktails with Hades. So Chernabog has always struck me because he has a couple of different beasts in him, and they really aren't beasts. He's kind of half bat, half bull, Well, bats are crazy, wildly different kind of animals with their radar and their ability to fly, and they eat all the insects that bug us. I mean, they have a real purpose around. And of course, bulls are reminiscent of charging or breaking things, or on the stock market, rising, lifting, being strong and agile. And so in dealing with this Cautionary Tales story, I was really coming from the place of someone who had physical challenges and impairments, turning to music for their sweet spot. And little did they know there was a beast in the attic sitting up there going, oh, something has to quell all that evil every now and then. There's Sherlock Holmes with his violin. I mean, he would be this frantic, antic entity, Sherlock would, even though he's a good guy. And he'd play his violin and he'd just completely change and relax. And I saw Chernabog in this other way. I had not seen him before, where there was this tenderness in him, and this beautiful organ music would just quell him and allow him to sort of be at peace for 40 minutes. And he loved the person playing this. But, the world doesn't really like something that looks like half a bat and half a bull, so humankind gives him a big problem. He'd rather just be up on his mountain hanging out. So those were sort of the angles I took coming into it.
I really enjoyed that one. And I will circle back to Emily's excellent question.
Good. What was the other question?
It was, what do villains have to offer in storytelling that heroes do not?
Heroes also offer things that villains do not. I think The
Absolutely.
point being that you don't necessarily need a villain and a protagonist in every story. You need conflict. You can write a romance that is simply about, two girls liking the same boy, two boys liking the same girl, two boys liking the same boy. I mean, however you want to spin it. And that's enough conflict. It doesn't have to actually be evil. But in the case of the kind of stories I write, which are more mythical, Disney stories tend to work from the myth. And so you are dealing with the hero myth, which I think is a very good point. And heroes tend to be painted fairly perfect. They aren't, and I think a good hero never is, but they tend to be simplified into something rather handsome and perfect. Even princesses, they're pretty and perfect, which is, I think, why some of the Pixar work where they go way outside that envelope, all that works so well. And villains offer you this rich amount they can bring to a story in terms of conflict, because of their dark side. But a villain with some kind of sympathetic moment or quality to them offers you an incredible depth, because it's kind of the Silence of the Lambs Lecter character who can have such an intellectual and interesting conversation with it's not Reese, but what is her name in that story? Clarice. And yet the guy goes home and eats a person's liver. So
he's a very meaty character, no pun intended.
Yeah. But he has these two sides. So villains with these two faces, the old theater thing of the frown and the smile. They offer so much depth for a writer. You can really, they're almost you tend as a writer, I think, to play much more into the villain side than you do the protagonist side, simply because they have more to offer. They're more interesting.
Oh, yeah, there's absolutely a lot of fun in their characters. And we've certainly talked about characters, but I'd also love to talk about setting. You like to merge Disney stories with real Disney spaces. As we've shared for Kingdom Keepers, it was the theme parks and cruise line. But why was it important for you to set Cautionary Tales in the Walt Disney Archives?
The archives, Becky and Kevin in the archives, Becky Klein, have guided me and helped me for a decade now. I feel like they're family with me. And if you're doing Disney iconic characters, where would a storyteller go first? Which I have done so many times. I have flown down to LA and driven over to Burbank and walked into those archives and said, Becky, what the heck do I do? Because the archives have it all. They have the props from all the movies, and they just give you chills when you see them. And they have, I don't know if you've heard this story, but the first time I went into the backside of the archives, which few people are allowed into other than Disney staff, but they were very kind and they let me in there. And I passed, I think it was anywhere between 14 and 18 volumes. They were small 3-ring binder notebooks, all of them black, and all of them on the spine said Sleeping Beauty 1, Sleeping Beauty 2, Sleeping Beauty 3, all the way up through whatever number they went to, 14 or 18 or whatever it was. Well, I turned to Kevin, I think was touring me, might have been Becky, and I said, wait, were there 14 drafts of the script to Sleeping Beauty? And Becky said, no, that's not what those are. And I said, can I see what those are? Pretty please? And she pulled one out, and they were the old carbon copy on sort of rice paper, very thin paper, which I grew up with. When you typed, you had a master copy, which was on the paper, then a sheet of this blue. Anytime you handled it, you got blue ink on your fingers. It was a sheet of what they called carbon paper. And then on the other side of it, just because the carriages on the typewriters were set for a certain depth, you had a very thin piece of paper, a very gossamer piece of paper. And when you typed, you got a very nice master document. And behind it, you got this kind of fuzzy carbon copy. So these notebooks were those kind of clear inserts, that have 3 punches, so you can put a piece of paper on one side and a piece of paper on the other. And as you flipped through them, all of these were a stenographer's notes of every meeting that took place with Walt Disney in it concerning Sleeping Beauty.
Wow, that's incredible.
And there were 14 or 18 of them. So I sat there reading while Walt's saying, I really think we should have a greenish background here. And one of his people is saying, sir, we're going to have a lot of green in the next scene. It's going to be much better if we go with a brown tone in here. We'll do whatever you want, but what do you think about that? And you go, oh, yeah, sorry, that's right. We're going over there. Let's keep it brown. It was just unbelievable stuff. And they had these for so many movies. And I was just like in heaven. I was listening to Walt Disney speak. I mean, oh my gosh. One of the streaming services has done a thing where they took and it was one of our great actors. He collected a bunch of actor friends. Paul Newman had passed away, and he had destroyed a biography written about him because he had all those notes of him giving interviews, and he didn't like what was in them, so he threw them out. Well, those were actually on tape and had been transcribed, just like Disney had them done live, because they weren't on tape in those days until about Mary Poppins. And so these people took about 15 great actors of our time, and they reenacted all of the Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward love affair, conversations, family. It's fascinating. It just occurred to me as I was sitting here how much fun it would be to take those Sleeping Beauty things and edit them down and get about 7 people to play the roles. And we could hear what happened in these meetings again, because it's fantastic. It's some of the most creative people of our time, and they're sitting in the same room, smoking their cigarettes, drinking their coffee, and figuring out these movies that have become legendary movies.
I was going to say that would make a great book that I would like to read, but I love your idea to put it on screen and have them act it out.
Yeah.
What a wealth of knowledge.
I ought to do that. Anyway, I mean, it just seems so logical. If I was going to go to the archives, which I did to figure out a lot of this, why wouldn't my characters? But you bring up an interesting thing, because I did not, as it turns out with Cautionary Tales, I mean, I was perfectly willing to do whatever Disney wanted, but I'm not a huge fan of short story collections. I read Stephen King's short story collections. I can't think of many others that I read. And it's not that I don't love them. I love short stories. I don't know why I don't read collections, but I put that onto my own project. I thought, wait, what if people don't like short stories? What if they want a long story? So, excuse me, I went to Lauren again, the masterful Lauren, and I said, what if I could create a story that was independent of these 7 or 8 short stories, but connected them all with character? And it took her a minute and me a minute for me to even explain that correctly. But basically, I eventually said, I want to meet these 2 characters and then follow them, have them be our escorts into these stories. And they might even participate in the stories. They might observe them, or they might and she went, well, I mean, why would we do that? And I said, I think it would give the reader 2 choices. They could open up Cautionary Tales to any short story and just read it. Or if they wanted to read it from the beginning, they could follow these 2 kids, put themselves in place of these 2 kids, and step into all these Disney stories, which would make it, I think, even more interesting and more compelling. And you might want to read it 3 or 4 times to figure it all out. And then I said, besides which, Lauren, if I mess this up, it should be that we can just pull them out of the book, and these things will stand on their own with a little bit of tinkering. And she said, well, given that, let's give it a try. So I did. And I took these two characters who went to the archives just as I've done so many times, except when they're there, the mask, basically the shipping wrapper comes off, a little blanket comes off what turns out to be the mirror from Snow White. And Tim, one of the characters, steps closer to look into it and gets sucked right into all these stories. Pretty soon, Billy, his dear friend, does the same, and now they're both rumbling and tumbling through all my stories. So that ended up making it a little more of a Rubik's Cube, but really fun for me to try to figure out.
And it was cool how you used color in your book, that the pages when we're in the archives and we're in like our present real world were black pages, but when we were in the Disney world, it was light pages. So it was very easy to also follow your setting using how
I thought that
you
was
ended
incredible.
up printing the book, like the physicality of the
That's
book
the
helps
book
the
designers,
storytelling.
She did a great job.
It was awesome. I enjoyed
It was
that.
an amazing job of designing the book. And we were lucky there because when Disney pitched me this, they said, we do every now and then we do what's just called a special book. And they have another term for it, but it's like a unique book. And they said, we put a little more money into the covers. We do, we're going to do on this book, we're going to do a lot of Abigail Larson illustrations. I went, Abigail Larson. I mean, she's one of the best. And so it's kind of like, we don't have a checkbook on this. We want to make this as good as we can make it, as fun as when I got those galleys back, which is an early proof of the books, and all the stuff in the archives was on black pages. I went, oh my gosh, these guys are killing it, because that's not easy and that's not cheap. And they did a beautiful job with this book. Abigail Larson, oh my gosh, did she do a beautiful job.
As we want to talk about the title Cautionary Tales, like you said, mythology, there's always something we're trying to get away or come away with from these books. So what is the cautionary tale that you want readers to come away with after joining Billie and Tim on their adventure?
Yeah, well, I think each of the stories, if I've done it well, has a cautionary tale. But the overall, I think there are probably a couple. I mean, one would be that, be careful when you're in the Disney archives.
Wear gloves.
You might step through a mirror. So that's sort of an obvious one. But, things are not always as they appear. And stories and characters are not always as they seem. I think that's what I would say. So that, you read this is going to be about Ursula or the Headless Horseman. Well, I hope you have no idea where this is actually going.
Put aside
because
what you
this
already
isn't
know.
going where you think it's going. So, the fun of this is to sort of mess with you, the reader. You hear Ursula and you go, oh, cool. Whoa, is what I want you to say. So, yeah, the cautionary tale is be careful what you wish for.
Oh, for sure. Well, we wished to have you on our show and no regrets there. So thank you for making that come true.
Oh, my pleasure.
As we interview different authors, we always like to ask two questions. Our first would be, what advice do you have for aspiring authors?
Oh, good. So do you have a half hour?
And we get another one?
Sure.
I teach at Boise State University, so I get into this a lot. Because of course, I get asked this a lot. I speak at middle schools all over the country, and I get asked this a lot. I generally say there are three things that are important to any writer, and that's reading, reading, and reading. You've probably heard that 100 times. Not terribly original, but totally true. I can put it a different way. When you read, your vocabulary is always constantly improving. You're reminded of words you've forgotten about. Maybe you see a couple words you never knew. You see them, of course, always in a different order and a different way that they're used. Reading also shows you form. It shows you beginning, middle, and end and how hard that is. You may not see it, but when you're taught it, you go, oh my gosh. Even as senior college kids go, oh my gosh, I learned this in middle school. I never knew how incredibly complex this is. And it's really complex. The other piece of advice is, people often say, I didn't have the time, ... Even in my own family, my children or my wife will say, I didn't have the time. And I just don't like that expression. What the expression should be is, I didn't make the time. Time is a very flexible thing. Gabriel Garcia Marquez, one of the great writers of our time, who's passed on, one of the most lyrical, beautiful storytellers that ever lived. Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote 1 page a day. He got going about 8:30, drank a strong cup of coffee. He reviewed the prior day's page and rewrote it like mad, and then put it away, and it was done. And he started another page. He wrote 1 page, and when he finished, his work for the day was done. Sometimes I would imagine that was a half hour. Sometimes I imagine that was 7 hours. And his thing was, there are 365 days in the year. At the end of a year, I've got a 365-page book. I'm done. And he wrote brilliantly. So you can make time, and you must. If you're a serious writer, you'll know it, because you can't stay away from it. It pulls you to it. And even if you put 30 minutes in before you head off to work or head off to class, or you come home and you have a dinner and then you spend 30 minutes before you go and stream something. If you can spend an hour, great. If you can spend 3 hours, great. If you can find 2 hours on a Saturday morning or a Sunday afternoon, great. But there is time. And the point to that is you put yourself in the chair and you write. You don't do the checkbook. You don't check in on TikTok. You don't do anything like that. You sit there and you work. And writing is work. The first draft is fun, and the next 6 drafts are agony. And all of my books have gone through at least 4 full rewrites. 61 books now before they're published. It's just the way it is, at least for me. It takes multiple drafts to get them concise and tight and the character arcs correct, tie it all together well, get the right words. It's a complex thing to write even a short story, like in Cautionary Tales. These things took months. That you'd think, 12 pages, 15 pages, knock it off. No, it's actually harder, because you have to fit all this beginning, middle, and end, character arcs, all this in like 20, 30 pages. You're going, oh my gosh, I'm going to go out of my mind. Dave Barry and I once were asked to write a Peter Pan illustrated book, the little 38-page, mostly pictures. And they wanted us to tell the Peter Pan story, not from J.M. Barrie, but of the movie, because they had discovered in their archives, Mary Blair's drawings.
Oh, love her.
And she set the whole template for Peter Pan's animated look. And they went, my gosh, look at all this wonderful art we've got. Let's tell the story again. They gave Dave Barry and me 1,500 words to tell the entire story of the Peter Pan movie. And many of the most important pieces in the movie, the sketches weren't found. There were no drawings. There were no alligators. There were all these things that were missing. And we had 1,500 words, not a word more to do this. So we spent probably 6 months trying to write that book. And we finally got it to 1,496 words. And we were like, yeah, it was hard work. We turned it into Disney and they said, hey, we just found some more pictures. Can you write some more? We wanted to kill a few people. No. But so, my point being that when the work is the work, and it is work, and enjoy it and celebrate it, because it's the best work on earth, even if it's what you're doing for play. And so that comes to my third point, which is when you get to be college age, don't try to go out there and live off your writing. Study something that's going to get you a good job, and get that good job. You see a lot of lawyers who are authors. And that's because they got themselves a good job, and it's a job you write a lot in. And in their spare time, and lawyers are busy people, and they found the time, they find time to write novels. And they write darn good novels because they're practiced writers. So you just need to find the time, make the time, believe in it. But only 5% of authors live off of writing. So you've got to have a good job to keep you alive, and then have fun with it. That was a long answer.
It was a great answer.
Great
I'm like,
answer.
I want to take notes over here.
We all want to take your class now at Boise.
Okay.
The last question we always ask our authors, you brought up writing books for Disney. You have books for Disney. But do you have a favorite Disney book on your bookshelf that you've enjoyed reading?
Wow. You guys are tough.
We like to add more to our shelf. That's what keeps the podcast going, you know?
Yeah, well, if I could tour you around my house, I'd show you all these incredibly wonderful compilations that Wendy Lefcon and others at Disney have put together. I love these because they have old photos in them and they tell you the history of the Imagineers or the history of the parks. I really like Disney history. I got to go into the photo archives, which is a whole separate place. And I went into the photo archives. And in there, I got to see photos of opening day at Disneyland. And I heard all the stories. I don't know if you know them, but the stories of opening day, it's amazing that place ever was open more than one day, because it was open for the press and everything that could go wrong went wrong. And yet the press was so impressed with it that they wrote it up well. And, you know, I mean, women's high heels were getting stuck in the asphalt and they were pulling out of their shoes. The water people in LA had gone on strike and they shut off all but 1/3 of the water. So Disney had to decide whether he was going to run the water fountains or the toilets. Wisely, he chose the toilets.
Thank goodness.
It just goes on and on. They issued X number of tickets. Those tickets were copied and forgery. They had way more people than they had invited, and they had to handle that. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So, you know, these books that cover all that just fascinate me. In terms of fiction, I mean, I love Jonathan Stroud's work for Disney. His sort of ghost story books that I think are now being made into a streaming series in England. Owen Colfer, I adore Artemis Fowl and his books. Rick Riordan, who's a friend, and is published by Disney Books. So, you know, I go a little more contemporary than old school. If you really want to study Disney, you read Brothers Grimm. I have. And that's where most of all their stories start. But these authors that are working now, Riordan, Owen Colfer, Jonathan Stroud, Mo Willem in the illustrated world. Some of these guys have moved on to other publishers now, but they have many, many, many books from Disney Books. And they're all excellent writers and drawers and illustrators, and they're really good people. So those are some of my favorite books.
You gave us so much to add to our shelves. Again, like Courtney said, this is what keeps our podcast going, is all these recommendations, and we keep reading and keep reading. I think we've already covered at least 20 books this year.
Oh my gosh. Well, if you want a good interview and have not done Owen Colfer, you will need facial massage at the end of that, because you will laugh so hard.
Oh, that sounds great.
And Jonathan Stroud, you'll fall in love with because of his British accent, but he's so smart and such a kind man, and his writing is brilliant. I wish I could remember the titles. They're in another room. But I mean, I've read both. There are 3 of them, as I recall, and I've read them 2 or 3 times each. I mean, they're just fabulous.
Well, thank you so much for those recommendations. We always appreciate them. That's what keeps the podcast going. If you don't mind, we'd like to share what's next up for our listeners. We've planned a second episode for this month. You can join us for a discussion of Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shay Earnshaw. Published just a few months ago, Long Live the Pumpkin Queen is a young adult companion to Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. So here's the book's description. Sally Skellington is the official newly minted Pumpkin Queen after a whirlwind courtship with her true love, Jack, who Sally adores with every inch of her hat fabric seams. If only she could say the same for her new role as Queen of Halloween Town. Cast into the spotlight and tasked with all sorts of queenly duties, Sally can't help but wonder if all she's done is trade her captivity under Dr. Finkelstein for a different cage. But when Sally and Zero accidentally uncover a long-hidden doorway to an ancient realm called Dreamtown, she'll unknowingly set into motion a change of sinister events that put her future as Pumpkin Queen and the future of Halloween Town itself into jeopardy. Can Sally discover what it means to be true to herself and save the town she's learned to call home, or will her future turn into her worst, well, nightmare? So I think in addition to discussing this book, we will need to decide if Nightmare Before Christmas is a Halloween or Christmas story. Spoiler alert, I have very strong thoughts on this one. But I will save those for the episode. In the meantime, you can keep up with Book of the Mouse Club on Twitter and Instagram at Book of the Mouse. Email us with comments or ideas to bookofthemouseclub@gmail.com. Please be sure to leave us a review on iTunes so others can find our podcast and read and listen along with us. You can keep up with me, Courtney, on Instagram at Great Gutsby and on Twitter at Courtney_Guth.
And you can follow me, Emily, on Instagram and Twitter at the same handle at Emily_McD. Well, Ridley, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure getting to talk to you.
You're so kind to have me.
And sharing with us your new book with us and our listeners. We appreciate your time and storytelling that takes us into the world of Disney. Before you go, we do want you to be able to share the best place for our listeners to keep up with you and what you're up to. Also to check out all your great work and where we can buy your books. What's the best place that you as an author then get to benefit from your hard work, and especially
5%.
Yeah, that 5% so that we can help support you.
I mean, I always encourage people to first look for an independent bookstore in their town. And I have nothing against the chains. The chains put my kids through college. So, I mean, I'm not down. I'm not speaking poorly of the chains because I love them. And there might be a chain near you, but, you know, it's really great to support your local bookstores. And so if you have them, they should have my books. If they don't, burn the place down. No.
Most are willing to order.
If
I've always had a good experience.
Them, that's more polite. Just speak to them and they can order them. And you can always reach me through my website, ridleypearson.com. I am not on TikTok, but I'm about to be on TikTok. It turns out the Kingdom Keepers has 1.5 million followers on TikTok.
Wow.
And I never knew that. So I thought it might be time to get on there.
I think so.
And I'm on Twitter, Ridley Pearson. It's all Ridley Pearson.
Fantastic.
So usually without a space. So yeah, it's easy. And I love getting emails through my website. I get them.
That's how we found you.
Yeah, I get dozens a week, and I love it. Or a direct message through Twitter or any of that. So, you know, if you really want to find me, you can, and I love it. Please reach out.
Awesome. And we're looking forward to your first Inheritance book.
Oh, I can't wait. That's
out.
February 21st.
And you know we'll be reading it
5 times.
We would love to have you.
I'm so excited to finally get it published.
We're so excited.
Thank you again for joining us as our guest today. We typically give our authors the honor of closing our episode with a quote of their choice, but we thought it'd be fun to switch it up this time. Emily will read the Edgar Allan Poe quote that opens your book, and we would love to hear why you chose it. So Emily, take it away.
So Courtney and I both loved that you chose this quote from Edgar Allan Poe because we are both Marylanders, so we both love Edgar Allan Poe. And you open your book with, quote, "All that we see or seem is but a dream within a dream," end quote, Edgar Allan Poe. So what led you to choose that to open your book?
One, I love Poe. He also lived in Providence, and I lived in Providence for a while. This is, by nature, Cautionary Tales is a story about a story within a story, or a dream within a dream. So there's a front story of these two kids, and then they go into these other stories. So it just seems so fitting to me. And I don't even remember where I found it, but I was stumbling around. I went, oh my gosh, a dream within a dream. That's dreamy. So that's why.
Well, this interview has been a dream. So again, thank you for making that dream of ours come true and joining us today.
Thanks so much.
Book of the Mouse Club has no affiliation with the Walt Disney Company. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and participants are theirs and theirs alone. They do not represent the organizations or companies they happen to work for.